We begin at the Texas State Senate. Senators now entering the fifth hour of deliberation in the impeachment of suspended Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The 30 voting senators are serving as the jury in this case that came together inside of a room in that building today at the state capitol. Each senator deciding if they will vote to convict or vote to acquit Ken Paxton on each of the 16 articles of impeachment. Thanks for joining us for KVUE News at 5. I'm Brian May.
And I'm Quita Culpepper. Now, those jurors started deliberating just before noon today after listening to 2 hours of closing statements.
KVUE's Ford Sanders has been in the Senate chamber each day of this trial.
And Ford, we heard passionate statements from both the prosecution and the defense today.
Quita, Brian, each the prosecution and defense, they both had an hour for closing statements, and they both used that time each to make sure they pled their case to senators. Now, for the past 8 days, jurors listened to a total of 20 witnesses and came in fresh today for those closing statements. House Board of Managers Chair State Representative Andrew Murr set the scene using just 10 minutes of the prosecution's time for closings. He then reserved the right to close, opening the door for the defense. Tony Busby delivered a fiery closing, claiming the evidence shown in this trial nowhere near meets a conviction for AG Paxton.
Because there's no doubt that these folks did not prove a case. They didn't prove a preponderance. They didn't prove anything other than they don't like Ken Paxton.
Murr got back to the podium to finish the House's remaining 50 minutes of closings. He played back key moments from the trial for the jurors, reminding them of the testimony they heard, telling them the answer here is simple.
These articles ask the Senate to do exactly what Mr. Paxton's counsel is begging you not to do, to look at the entirety of Mr. Paxton's conduct. And when the Senate does so, there is no reasonable doubt that Mr. Paxton committed the acts set forth in these articles, and that these acts were an abuse of office and a breach of public trust.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said these senators will deliberate together until about 8 p.m. tonight, but they can go longer if they want. Now, if they can't reach a verdict this evening, they'll be right back here tomorrow morning to deliberate at 9 a.m. Live from the Texas State Capitol, Ford Sanders, KVUE News.
All right, Ford, great work the last couple of weeks. We'll talk more about this now with KVUE anchor and political director Ashley Godot and senior reporter Tony Polahetsky. You all have also been watching this from the beginning to now.
Yes, you have. And okay, you all, the closing statements, very, very compelling from both sides.
But two different approaches. We saw Tony Busby take on a far more impassioned tone, really attempting to put an exclamation point on 10 days of evidence that his side presented to those senators. But at the same time, one attorney sized up Tony Busby's performance today, noting that when the facts are on your side, you pound the facts. When the facts are not on your side, you pound the table. And his suggestion today was that Tony Busby did that, broadly undermining the House's case, saying that they simply did not bring sufficient evidence, or in some cases, he says, any evidence at all to sustain a conviction of Ken Paxton. But we also saw State Representative Andrew Murr, who did the bulk of the closing argument on behalf of the House, going through the articles, some of them line by line, representing evidence and sort of highlighting and underscoring information that we've heard over the past 10 days that he says absolutely shores up the House's case. And that is the reason, according to him and his team, that Ken Paxton should be resoundingly found guilty on these impeachment articles.
Certainly, Tony. One of the things he did that was particularly interesting was he said to the senators, Representative Murr, straightforward, these pieces did not seem to fit together when you were hearing them. But now you can see, you can take these pieces and put together the puzzle and see the whole picture. And that certainly was powerful for them to hear. But then they were, I would say that the strategy by the defense was, the prosecution was very strong in that the last 10 minutes were reserved for State Representative Jeff Leach to speak directly to the senators. Now, Jeff Leach is one of the most conservative members in the Texas House of Representatives. He's also on the Board of Managers, and he talked directly to the relationship he shares with Ken Paxton, becoming choked up, shedding tears, holding back tears even, because he says he loves Ken Paxton. This was his mentor. This was his friend. This is someone who he attended football games with and goes to church with. And he talked about how hard it was for him to have to take the vote to impeach, saying he knows how these senators feel, but that they must take a stand and do what is right. And so let's talk about the vote that is before us. There are 30 voting members in the Senate because Angela Paxton, State Senator Angela Paxton, is not permitted to vote. She's his wife. There are 12 Democrats along with 19 Republicans. You need 21 senators to convict. You just need, therefore, 9 of the 18 voting Republicans to side with Democrats if a conviction is going to happen.
And keep in mind that the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt the highest bar in Texas for conviction, especially in a case like this.
And so we will be continuing to be on verdict watch here for you at KVUE. We'll bring it to you live when it happens.
Great job.
All right.
Great job. We'll see what happens. Now, Ashley mentioned it, when the senators are ready to cast those votes, we will have that coverage live right here on KVUE. You can watch it on KVUE, KVUE.com, and of course the wonderful app that Ashley and Tony have been on for the last 2 weeks, KVUE Plus. If you don't have it yet, go get it now. It's a big night to have KVUE Plus.